Abundant rainfall in 2024 led to healthy crop output in the previous fiscal year, with wheat and oilseeds seeing higher production. Robust agricultural activity translated into 4.6 percent growth in agriculture, forestry, and fishing GVA. Gross value added nearly double the previous 2.7% growth. However, an uncertain outlook for 25-26 may reverse the progress seen in the previous year. The year 25 is expected to be one of the hottest years on record, with the IMD forecasting above normal maximum temperatures in most parts of the country and above normal number of heat wave days in most parts of east and central India. This is in line with the forecast for global temperatures. This year's January and February global surface temperatures was 1.33 degrees Celsius and 1.26 degrees Celsius above the 20th century average. India will hold off on tariff measures despite any US tariffs. India to tweak them only in trade deal. India will not rush to reduce import duties on American goods despite retaliatory tariffs from Washington, two officials said. US President Donald Trump was expected to make tariffs announcement past midnight Indian time, with no official confirmation of the new American trade policy available at the time of going to print. India will avoid any knee-jerk reaction, especially at a time with the two country India will avoid any knee-jerk reaction, especially at a time when the two countries are negotiating a mutually benefit bilateral trade agreement. Reports in the US media in the run-up to Wednesday's announcement stated that Trump administration was considering an across-the-board 20% import duty on all items. Earlier in this week, Trump claimed India would be dropping tariffs very substantially. I heard that India just a little while ago is going to be dropping tariffs very substantially. Wockhardt to pull plug on US generics business pulls antibiotics. Wockhardt Limited has built a name for maker of generic drugs, is shifting its focus in the US market to developing new antibiotics, turning away from generics and entering a space largely vacated by big pharma companies. The company is working on new antibiotics and identified segments for a push into biosimilar drugs. Macrotech accuses Abhinandan Co. of forgery. The Lodha versus battle rekindled on Wednesday with Abhishek Lodha led Macrotech Developers Limited accusing owned by brother Abhinandan of forging documents to gain access of priced brand name. Good progress in FTA talks, says EU Ambassador Harvey Delfin. India and EU have made good progress on some aspects of talks for a free trade agreement that both sides want to conclude by the year end, with US threats of tariffs strengthening the rationale for it, EU Ambassador Harvey Dolphin said. Manufacturing PMI hits 8-month high, but there's reason for caution. After failing to a 14-month low of 56.3 in February, the HSBC India manufacturing PMI rebounded to 58.1 in March. TCS KLA applied among 35 firms eyeing SCL Mohali Reject. Soon SBI customers may be available to print their own debit cards. NTPC seeks global partners to build 15 gigawatt nuclear reactors. NTPC is India's top power producer, is seeking global partners to build large nuclear reactors without 15 gigawatts combined capacity. Sitaraman to visit US in April for World Bank spring meetings. Coal India eyeing Coal India eyeing lithium blocks in Australia. Argentina chairman. Government appoints S. Raman as PFRDA chairman. Palm oil imports rise in March but stay below normal dealers. India Nepal inked 625 million worth of MOUs for community development works. Farm output growth of over 4% is the new normal, Niti Aayog's Chand. Good progress in FTA talks. Lok Sabha clears with changes in amendment banking laws bill. and railways to run more coal rakes to avoid summer power crisis. Average number of rakes deployed is expected to rise 470 a day from 440 rakes last year. Centre Delhi to ink agreement on Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana. Farm output growth of 4% is the new normal, Niti Aayog's Chan. A growth of more than 4% in farm output, which now accounts for 18%, country's economy is the new normal, sustaining long-term low food inflation. Niti Aayog's member Ramesh Chand said in an interview, farm output is expected to have grown at 4%, 4.6% in fiscal year 25 that ended on 31 March up from 2.7% in FY24. Food inflation, which cooled to 3.75% in February from 5.95% in January, may stay below 4%, offering relief to consumers. Chand also said that going by India's farm output, price of commodities, and trade patterns with the US, there is some scope for India to reduce tariffs on some farm products imported from the US, including apple. The reciprocal tariffs that the US administration is implementing imply different tariffs on imports from different countries. It goes against the MFN principle of the World Trade Organization that warrants a non discriminatory approach to tariffs. You can have different tariffs only if you have a bilateral trade agreement. So our effort should be to go for a bilateral trade deal which requires time. There is also a need to wait and watch how other nations are dealing with the situation. The reciprocal tariffs the US administration is implementing implies different trade tariffs on imports from different countries. It goes against the MFN principle of the WTO that warrants a non discriminatory approach to tariffs. You can have different tariffs only if you have a bilateral trade agreement, so our effort should go for a bilateral trade deal which requires time. There is also a need to wait and watch how other nations are dealing with the situation. According to Chan, when a country has a trade surplus with another nation, it can see to it that the situation remains a win win even if it has to yield a bit on certain products. Chand also said that the Washington apples, for example, even after duty reduction, there would be a price gap with Indian apples, and hence there is no threat to domestic sector. India has a 75% import duty on apples. On items that we are not able to meet the growing domestic requirement. On items we are not able to meet the growing domestic requirement, it makes sense to have a reasonable tariff and let the imports come. On items where we are not able to meet the growing domestic requirement, it makes sense to have a reasonable tariff and let the imports come. Referring to dry foods, referring to the high import of tariff on certain products which India is a major producer and exporter, Chand said these redundant tariffs could be lowered under a bilateral trade deal. Chand has cited the example of basmati rice and tea in the sector. Chan said that the growth rate of more than 4% is the new normal for India's agriculture output. I do not consider in the present context that the growth of rate of 4% is extraordinary. It is a new normal in my view. Agriculture must grow more than 4% to help India achieve the goal of Viksit Bharat. Since this is the largest sector accounting for 18% of GDP compared manufacturing sector's 14% contribution, its growth is very important. The Statistics Ministry has had in its second advance estimates for FY25 released on 28 February projected a 4.6% growth in the farm sector up from 2.7%. India and European Union have made good progress on some aspects of talks for a free trade agreement that both sides want to conclude by the year end, with US threats of tariffs strengthening the rationale for it. During a visit to India in February with almost the entire EU College of Commissioners, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and Prime Minister Narendra Modi threw their weight behind the ambitious goal of finalizing the FTA by the end of 2025. The negotiations for the trade deal originally began in 2007, were suspended in 2013, and then revived in 2022. India and the EU have made good progress in the recent round of talks in Brussels in March, or some aspects, Delphin told the small group of journalists on Tuesday, referring to the 10th round of negotiations. Lok Sabha clears changes with changes and amended banking laws bill. The Lok Sabha on Wednesday cleared Banking Laws Amendment Bill 24, which aims to strengthen governance standards in the sector and ensure better protection for depositors. The bill, which includes amendments suggested by Rajya Sabha, will now be sent to the President for final approval before becoming a law. The bill also aims to improve consistency in reporting by banks to the RBI, hence audit quality in public sector bank, and increase the framework of directors other than chairperson and full-time directors in cooperative banks. It introduces more than 20 amendments to bring changes in the RBI Act 1934, Banking Regulation Act 1949, SBI 1955, Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act 1970, and Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act 1978. One major change proposed through the bill is through the Banking Regulation Act 1949 to allow bank account holders to include up to four nominees. RBI Act, Banking Regulation Act, SBI Act, Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act, and Banking Companies Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act 1978. One major change proposed to the bill is Banking Regulation Act to allow account holders to include up to four nominees. The bill also seeks to transfer this includes provision for simultaneous and successive nominations, offering greater flexibility and convenience for the depositors and their legal aid, especially concerning deposits and articles in safe custody. Bill also seeks to transfer unclaimed dividend shares and interest or redemption of bonds to the Investors Education and Protection Fund, unclaimed dividend shares and interest or redemption of bonds to the Investor Education and Protection Fund IEPF Investment Education and Protective Fund. The bill also proposes revising the reporting dates for banks to submit statutory reports to the RBI from every Friday. Another proposed change relates to redefining substantial interest for dictatorship, which would increase to 2 crore instead of the current limit of 5 lakh, which was fixed almost 6 days ago. With regard to cooperatives operating in the banking space, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said the amendments in the Banking Regulations Act would apply only to cooperative banks or that part of cooperatives operating as bank. The bill proposes to increase the tenure of directors excluding that of a chairperson and whole-time directors in cooperatives. The bill proposes to increase the tenure of directors excluding that of a chairperson and whole-time directors from 8 to 10 years to align with the Constitution's 97th Amendment Act, redefining substantial interests for directorships, which would increase to 2 crore interest instead of the current limit of 5 lakh, which was almost substantial interest for directorships. With regard to cooperatives, Sitharaman said amendments in the banking regulation would apply only to cooperative banks or that part of the cooperative operating as banks. Manufacturing PMI rebounds, risk persists. RBI commenced the easing cycle by cutting the policy repo rate by 25 basis points in February. Any revisions to inflation and growth projections for FY25 and 26 by RBI will be closely watched. Green bonds to get another shot. Government plans to raise target. V market exits FY25 in style, but competition lingers threat. V market. VMart. VMart exits FY25 in style, but competition threat lingers. Why the IPO party may resume? The IPO market stalled amid market volatility, with no main board offers in March, but a 6.3% Nifty rebound in March, reversing a 5.9 slump. A renewed QIP activity in public sector banks signal optimism. Wockhardt to pull plug on US generic business, push antibiotics. Wockhardt targets 10-year exclusivity in the regulated markets for its novel antibiotics, obesity drugs. SBI seeks fintech partners to help customers print own debit cards. After failing to a 14-month low of 56.3 in February, the seasonally adjusted HSBC India Manufacturing PMI rebounded to 58.1. Purchasing Managers Index. A reading above 50 signals expansion. The surge was driven by the PMI's largest subcomponent, the new orders index, as the total sales in March expanded at their fastest pace since July 24. Companies cited strong customer interest, favorable demand conditions, and effective marketing initiatives, according to PMI Survey X report. The firms are expected to have ramped up production to meet year-end targets, which likely boosted volumes, but celebrations may be premature as US President Donald Trump is set to announce a swathe of tariffs on April 2 aimed at reducing America's reliance on foreign goods, escalating global tensions. He has already imposed tariffs on aluminum and steel. The PMI survey reflected this concern, showing subdued international orders. The direct hit to activity from tariffs would be fairly small. India is not as dependent on US demand as many other emerging markets, notably Mexico and Vietnam, said the Capital Economics report on April 1. We estimate that an average tariffs rise of 20% would translate into a roughly 0.4% reduction in India's GDP if exchange rates remain stable. However, the indirect impact would potentially prove bigger if it damages business and consumer confidence. The RBI will be prescient to the risk of the economic recovery prematurely running out of steam. Reciprocal tariffs is feared to hamper growth and drive inflation and could have a bearing on the monetary policy. RBI is scheduled to meet on F7 to 9 April. The latest growth and inflation trends point to further loosening. Wide-held expectations are RBI would cut the repo rate by another 25 basis points, taking it to 6%. RBI commenced the easing cycle by cutting the policy repo rate by 25 basis points in February. It has also announced a slew of liquidity measures to support the economy. Economic growth prospects remain uncertain amid the current backdrop. Beyond external risks, slowdown in urban consumption has been a growing concern. GDP growth for quarter 3 FY24-25 improved modestly to 6.2% year on year, up from 5.6% year on year, suggesting that the trough is behind us. High frequency data since then have been mixed at best. We are tracking quarter 4 FY24-25 real GDP growth at 6.7% year on year, implying average GDP growth of 6.2% year on year for FY25. If realized, this would be 30 basis points lower than the MOSP's and RBI 6.5% year-on-year forecast. Any revisions to inflation and growth projections for FY25 and FY26 by the RBI will be closely watched. Meanwhile, the March PMI report also pointed out that amid reports of the higher prices for copper, electronic items, leather, LPG, and rubber, cost burdens rose further for Indian manufacturers, pushing PMI's input cost index to a 3-month high. In contrast, there was a softer increase in prices charged for Indian goods. As for business expectations, the future output index eased marginally to 64.4 in March from 64.9 in February and remains exposed to the risk of further moderation. Green bonds to get another shot, government plans to raise target. India's green financing push could gain new momentum this financial year with the government exploring a plan to increase its 25,000 crore targeting for issuing sovereign green bonds to people said. This suggests a turnaround in the government's thinking from a few months earlier when it was considering a plan to fall back on conventional government securities and other debt instruments. Green bonds, a type of fixed income investment, are used to finance projects with a positive environment impact. The government's plan to increase its 25-26 target for issuing sovereign green bonds will depend on India's so-called green premium landscape, the two people mentioned above said. Greenium is the gap between the yield investors get on green bond versus similar conventional bonds. The yield on green bond is lower due to investors' willingness to accept lower returns in exchange for perceived benefits of investing in green instrument. While many developed markets achieve a greenium of 3 to 8 basis points over the conventional bonds, in India this has been limited to 2 to 3 basis points. 1 basis point is hundredth of a percentage point. After its earlier hesitance, the government anticipates a higher green premium this fiscal year driven by investor interest in sustainable investment policy initiatives to boost government financing. However, if actual demand falls short, the government may fall back for conventional bonds for green financing. The initial target of 25,000 crore for green bonds in FY26 may be revised upward, which would also depend on demand and project implementation timelines. The emphasis will be on backloading funds to ensure that critical green infrastructure projects receive adequate financing during the year. Backloading, where a significant portion of expenditure is shifted towards the latter part of the fiscal year, is a strategy to align disbursement with project execution milestones. Over the past 3 years, the government, through the Reserve Bank of India, has issued 58,000 crore in sovereign green bonds with an additional 25,000 crore earmarked for FY26. General Catalyst leads funding in musculoskeletal care startup. Startups look overseas as AI reshapes global insurance. And Kotak eyes $2 billion new private credit fund, biofortified food brand, better nutrition. Argos watches grabs angel funding for luxury watches. Kruha's collective consumer fund invest in luggage brand for Jaden. AI firms flexible workspace demand rises. Beams fintech fund backs Infinity. Tata's get semicon veteran Ang to lead Dholera chip fabric fab. And culture most vital, how to run a GCC Tesco's Mitra. AI firms flexible workspace demand rises. Flexible workspace providers are seeing higher demand for office space from artificial intelligence companies and AI businesses. With the bulk of leasing happening in Bengaluru, Pune, and Hyderabad, flex office operators such as WeWork India, IndiCube, Tablespace and others have signed on AI firms as tenants of 50 to 700 seats in their centers. Leading shared workspace firms WeWork, India, and IndieCube have signed multiple deals with AI startups. WeWork has signed lease transactions with companies such as Asper AI Technologies, an AI platform for consumer goods, Eightfold AI India Private Limited, a talent intelligence platform. AI is one of the most dynamic and fast growing sectors today, and table space we are seeing increasing demand from AI first companies as these business scale and adapt to market shifts. Flexible workspaces offer the ideal solution, allowing expansion, quick pivots, and operational efficiency. We are particularly seeing Pune and Hyderabad emerge as hotspots for AI and tech focused clients who require office space. A 2024 report by NASSCOM and BCG said AI market is projected to grow at 25 to 35% compounded average growth rate till 2027, supported by a large AI talent base and high investments. The AI size at 7 to 9 billion dollars in 2023 is estimated to reach 17 to 22 billion dollars by 2027. Tata gets Semicon veteran Ang to lead Dholera chip fab. The semiconductor manufacturing The semiconductor manufacturing Tata Semiconductor Manufacturing subsidiary of Tata Electronics Private Limited, has appointed KC Ang, a veteran industry executive, KC Ang, to head the Group Semiconductor Foundry business. The unlisted Tata Group entity ventured into chip manufacturing under the Centre's India Semiconductor Mission when it announced a $10 billion chip foundry project in Dholera, Gujarat. When it announced $10 billion chip foundry project in Dholera, Gujarat, $10 billion chip foundry project in Dholera, Gujarat, in partnership with Tata's Taiwan's power chip semiconductor manufacturing company, PSMC Power Chip Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Armed with nearly 3 decades of work experience, uh, will head the group's chip manufacturing business. Ang served as the president for Asia market at US headquartered chip manufacturing firm Global Foundries, Tata Electronics said in a statement. Tata Global Foundries, as per the report by market researcher Counterpoint, is the world's fifth largest semiconductor manufacturing company by volume, capturing 5% of share of the world chip market. Ang will drive manufacturing operations and work closely with our customers and ecosystem partners. The company is making steady progress towards commencing operations at Dholera Fab. A fab or foundry refers to factories that manufacture data processing chips out of silicon wafers. A fab or foundry refers to factories that manufacture data processing chips out of silicon wafers that manufactures data processing chips out of silicon wafers. Chip fabs are typically among the world's most sophisticated and complex factories, requiring high capital investments, unlimited and uninterrupted water and electricity supplies, and a skilled workforce capable of running an automated chip machinery at the highest possible efficiency, including their direct and indirect impact. Processor chips and associated products such as memory and storage chips make for nearly 60% of the value of an average electronics gadget in the modern consumer world. As per industry veterans, India has not had any functioning chip fabs supplying to either the domestic or international markets. Culture most vital to aspect of how you run a GCC. Tesco's Mitra. Tesco plc, one of the UK's largest retailer, was rocked by an accounting scandal and reported its worst annual loss in 2015. Its cash coffers were nearly empty, and there was a need to transform the business to get more cash. Sumit Mitra, former BT Group managing director, was brought in by the British retailer in 2017 to head Tesco Business Solutions, the global the global capabilities centers. His sole mandate was to drive change. Today, the company has its one of its oldest running GCCs in India, and it employs 5,500 people at its Whitefield office in Bengaluru. CEO Mitra spoke to Mint about Tesco's in-house center and the work his company looks after for the parent firm Tesco plc. Tesco runs three other GCCs worldwide in Budapest, Scotland, and Ireland, apart from the one in Bengaluru. I always say culture is most important aspect of how you run a BCC or GBS Global Business Services. We changed the name from Tesco Hindustan Service Center to Tesco Business Solutions so that people feel it is a global business, that it's a global business and that it's supporting our global business. I told the then chief executive that we are going to build a GBS, and it is going to be a step change. We created a service model framework that sought to streamline 700 Tesco processes to 10. Our idea was to get into the architecture of those processes. Those processes are how we serve our customers and how we do our strategy. I'll give you a simple example. We have a process where customers return products. We get around 290, 2,95,000, 5 to 3 lakh products returned every year into our stores. Initially, we had 25 people in Bengaluru to get those return forms and process them. They would look into issues, cluster them, map them against right suppliers, and try to refund from those suppliers. What we do now is that we got a whole end-to-end AI tool that manages this process, and then we use some robotics to translate some of the task history. We call it AI for operations, and what that means is a structure means it structures the unstructured data. First, it picks up the right words, and then it converts into actionable outcomes that my team needs to do with the support. Everybody is talking about artificial intelligence. We have working on AI for the last 6 years. It is almost like people going to FOMO saying if we don't really use AI, we will fall behind. So let's go and do some test cases. We have scaled AI. For me, it's FOBO, fear of being obsolete, not FOMO. Macrotech accuses Abhinandan Lodha firm of forgery. TCS KLA applied among 35 firms, eyeing SCL Mohali reject. The companies are expected to submit their bid by 16 April for 4,000 crore contract. India's owned India's lone state-owned chip fabrication unit plans to upgrade India's lone state-owned chip fabrication unit have picked up pace, with Center meeting 35 companies last month in a bid to evaluate their roles in a deal which is worth 4,000 crores. SCL Semiconductor Laboratory in Mohali. RBI's new Deputy Governor Gupta seen as dovish on interest rate. RBI's new Deputy Governor Gupta seen as dovish on interest rate. Poonam Gupta, Deputy Governor, RBI. India's appointment of Poonam Gupta, a world former bank economist who has advocated for lower interest rates in the past, boasts the case for monetary policy easing in Asia's third largest economy, analysts said. Alternative dispute resolution suffering India to make tariff changes only under trade agreement. Creditors seize pledged small mid-cap shares as prices fall. TCS KLA applied among 35 firms eyeing SCL Mohali reject. The plans to upgrade India's lone state owned chip fabrication unit have picked up pace, with Center meeting 35 companies last month in a bid to evaluate their roles in a potential deal that is worth 4,000 crore. According to the two executives aware of the matter, companies like TCS, HCL Tech, Israel based Tower Semiconductors, and US firms such as Applied Materials, KLA Corporation, and IBM, among others, are vying for the opportunity to bring the existing 180 nanometer chip semiconductor production line, 180 nanometer semiconductor production line of SCL in Mohali to speed up and eventually move into more advanced chips. These companies are expected to submit their bid soon, one of the executives said on condition of anonymity. Companies like IBM, Belgium based IMEC, and Tower Semiconductors can help SCL with advanced high tech technology transfers, whereas the major role for equipment replacements can be done by firms such as Applied Materials and KLA. The executive cited the above, adding that IT services firms such as TCL and HCL Tech can help with the gaps analysis and consultation because of the expertise in managing similar projects. Queries emailed in HCL Tech, TCS, IBM, IMEC, Tower Semiconductors, and KLA did not elicit any response till press time. It's our policy not to comment on speculation, said Applied Materials in response to Mint's query or email. In 2023, the company has announced an investment of $400 million to build an engineering center in Bengaluru. The center will focus on the development of semiconductor manufacturing equipment technologies. SCL's current tender to revamp its existing facility is divided into three packages or tasks, which involves gap analysis and cleanroom modifications, technology transfers, and replacements of decade old equipment. The companies can bid for multiple packages as well as through consortium mode. The development assumes as one SCL modernizes itself completely, it would be India's very own company of strategic importance to develop the country's semiconductor ecosystem. With modernization, SCL would be the only option available for research and development, especially for chip design companies in the country, to do prototyping low volume production. The official added that currently the chip design companies have to tap global firms such as TSMC or Global Foundries to get limited sample of chips before production can start. This not only incurs huge cost but also limits their ability to do failure analysis, testing, and identifying any challenges in manufacturing or assembly firsthand. After upgrading the current fabrication line, the plan is to develop SCL to produce chips of more advanced technologies such as 65 nanometer or 40 nanometer nodes. Under India Semiconductor Mission, the government has earmarked 10,000 crore for modernization of SCL as of now. However, the budget is expected to go up once it forays into manufacturing advanced chips. SCL's current tender to revamp its existing facility is divided into three packages or tasks, which involves gap analysis, clean room modifications, would be India's very own company of strategic importance to develop the India's semiconductor ecosystem. The task involved in gap analysis, tech transfers, and equipment replacement. The companies can bid for multiple packages as well as through consortium mode, and the government has earmarked around 10,000 crore for modernization of SCL as of now. Who has advocated for lower interest rates in the past, boasts the case for monetary policy easing in the third largest economy. Gupta was appointed for a 3-year term. She becomes the RBI's first women deputy governor in over a decade and will likely join in the Monetary Policy Committee, which cut interest rates for the first time in 5 years in February. Economists expect more rate cuts, seen as Malhotra pivots a more growth-friendly approach than his predecessor Shaktikanta Das' previous work has bolstered their hope further. Gupta's expertise in macroeconomics and business cycles should help add more depth to RBI's ability to cut through the data noise and catch trends well, said Madhvi Arora, an economist with MK Financial Services Limited. We think the April cut is a done deal and her appointment probably helps the case. A well known economist and government advisor, Gupta worked for nearly 2 decades at the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. She succeeds Michael Patra, who was head of the Monetary Policy Department at the RBI, who retired in January. In an opinion piece published in the Economic Times after the last policy decision, Gupta has called the earlier repo rate of 6.5% unjustifiably high at a time when growth is slow. The South Asian economy expanded at its weakest pace since the pandemic in the last fiscal and is forecast to grow at 6.3% to 6.8% for the current financial year. The RBI needs to strengthen all of its functions to become a central bank of a developed India. Gupta was a part-time member of the Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister and the Director General of National Council of Applied Economic Research. My investments have a personal story, said Abhishek Bachchan. IPL recession proof for its fast food chains. Wakefield plans expansion, eyes IPO in 3 years. Investors bet clarity on tariffs will bring stability to markets. Brazil looks like a winner in the global trade war. Exporters bank on higher Chinese demand as Latin American power looks for new trade opportunities. Visa offers roughly $100 million to take over Apple's credit card. And Tesla sales dropped to lowest since 22 amid Musk backlash. Indian Army Field Hospital members provide medical aid as part of Operation Brahma in Mandalay on Myanmar on Wednesday following the 7.7 magnitude earthquake that hit last Friday. Vedanta seeks global partner Indian Metals to oil conglomerate. Vedanta looking for a global company to partner with an expansion projects worth $20 billion across zinc, aluminum, copper, oil, steel, gas, and power. Markets rebound ahead of US tariffs. NSDL gets launched to extend IPO launch. Air India's 737 Max windfall nears end. Air India's limited windfall of 737 Max jets amid a broader shortage of new planes is coming to an end after adding two Boeing aircraft a month on average since September 23, as the US manufacturer cleared a backlog of the jets it had originally built for Chinese carriers. The pool will run dry by June, people familiar with the matter said. Air India's easy supply was thanks to the supply chain quirk. Boeing was able to divert 737 MAX jet built for Chinese carriers as they deferred taking deliveries following regulatory concerns. Having ordered 190 of the aircraft in June 23, Air India's arm Air India Express has already taken possession of 41 of the 50 so-called white-tail planes, those built for others but still in shortage. Bharat Forge says it exported 100 guns. Bharat Forge chairman Baba Kalyani on Wednesday said the company has supplied 100 guns, including 18 advanced tower artillery guns, advanced tower, advanced towed artillery guns, advanced towed artillery guns, ATACs, to several countries. We exported artillery guns to Europe even before supplying them to the Indian Army. As a matter of fact, last year we supplied 100 guns to a European country, including 18 ATACs, Kalyani said at a press conference. It's great feeling. After 75 years of independence, India is not only capable of manufacturing its own artillery guns, but also exporting them to European nations. Our goal is to become largest artillery producer in the world, hopefully by 2030. MSME credit surges threefold in a decade report. Meet the bookkeepers to India's MSME. Tally Solutions accounting software is used by one in every four MSME. Now it's gearing for AI age. How can you withdraw part of your funds from EPF? Compare NRE FD rates. Meet Tally Solutions bookkeeper to India's MSMEs. What are tax efficient alternatives to liquid funds? Earlier, capital gains from liquid funds were taxed as per individual slab rates. However, after Budget 25, income from debt instruments qualified for a rebate from 87A. Leap from cost competitiveness to innovation led manufacturing. India can turn its low cost production base into a technology driven industrial force of high value. ChatGPT's Ghibli avatar will originality lose out. India has a basic consensus today on school education. SEBI's regulatory philosophy and reforms, well begun, is half done. America's exceptionalism is it finally starring at its sunset. Social media ad targeting put face of mass rebellion. The man who built Nike's Air Jordan, a show about finding a home in the world multidisciplinary exhibition, looks at the idea of home through varied lens. Festival that celebrates filmmaking around puppetoscope, explore the niche form of puppet films. ChatGPT's Ghibli avatar will originality lose out. This ChatGPT's successful role as an artist raises questions of Gen AI ethics and creative value. Given its potential market impact and economic effects, it's time for clarity and originality. India is currently on a decisive path to establishing itself as a global manufacturing powerhouse. Moving beyond cost competitiveness, the country is evolving into an innovation driven industrial hub. The foundation for this transformation is laid down by technology advancements, fast manufacturing startup ecosystem, strategic policy interventions, as highlighted in the budget for 25-26. With global supply chains shifting and industries transitioning to a smarter and more sustainable methods of production, India has an opportunity to move from the traditional build to print model to attain build to design and its core build to print to build to design. Modern manufacturing focuses more on intelligence than mere scale. The transition underway from labor intensive assembly lines to connected, automated, and AI driven factories. Now, at the dawn of a new industrial era, India's push for Industry 4.0 and in some cases 5.0 supported progressive policy measures is enabling enterprises to integrate automation, Internet of Things, and data analytics into production systems. The government's focus on semiconductor making, deep tech research and development, and electronics has already begun to attract major investments. Targeted scheme for critical minerals such as lithium with a focus on high high value tech applications will also be crucial in reducing India's import dependency and positioning the country as a key player in global supply chains. India has already benefited from a global diversification of supply chains. However, capturing long term value requires more than just a geopolitical advantage. Countries that consistently lead in manufacturing are those that prioritize cutting edge research and innovation. For example, South Korea invests 4% of GDP in R&D, a key reason why it dominates in sectors like consumer electronics and automotive technology. In contrast, India's GDP current R&D spending is around 0.7% of GDP. Closing this gap will require more aggressive push towards industry-led research in areas such as deep tech. In general, we must move beyond government supported projects to private sector driven innovation. However, innovation does not thrive in isolation. A robust manufacturing system ecosystem demands the collaboration of industry, academia, and startups. Moreover, competitiveness is not just a function of technology but also infrastructure and logistics. India has made significant progress with projects like Gati Shakti and Bharatmala. Even so, bottlenecks persist. Logistical costs in India still account for 14% of GDP. Logistical costs in India still account for 14% of GDP, significantly higher than the global benchmark of 8 to 10%. Addressing these disparities requires not only road and port development but also technology led optimization of supply chains with the help of AI, industrial IoT, and 5G telecom networks. Countries such as South Korea have developed specialized clusters to drive innovation. India's existing industrial corridors, like the Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, can provide a strong foundation, but more sector specific hubs for high tech and green industries need to be developed. The wide adoption of 5G enabled smart factories will be a defining moment for Indian manufacturing. Countries like Germany and China have demonstrated how ultra reliable and low latency communication can transform floors, enabling real time machine coordination, predictive maintenance, and smooth human machine collaboration. Several Indian auto component makers are integrating sensor enabled precision machining to enhance efficiency, reduce waste, and cut downtime. Scaling such technologies across industries will be crucial in elevating India's manufacturing competitiveness. An often overlooked yet fundamental factor in driving innovation is the degree to which one can easily access critical raw materials. Ensuring a steady supply of key materials like lithium, rare earth minerals, and specialized alloys is paramount as India deepens its footprint in high tech manufacturing. The budget has signaled a policy intent in this direction, with significant duty cuts on select critical minerals to strengthen global procurement networks. However, achieving true self reliance requires more than duty adjustments. It calls for investment in domestic exploration and processing apart from creation of strategic reserves. Public private partnerships should play a decisive role in migrating supply chain vulnerabilities and ensuring material security. Ultimately, India's manufacturing hinges on not just making finished goods but also fundamental shift in how it innovates across policies, processes, and partnerships. Turning a low cost production base into a high value technology driven industrial workforce that achieves leadership will demand bold investments, a sharper focus on R&D, and D, and a steadfast commitment to competitiveness. If India aligns to industrial ambitions with entrepreneurial and agility, vast talent pool, and flourishing digital economy, it will not just compete but set new global manufacturing benchmarks over the decades ahead. First is that all children must be going to school. This includes girls and children from all castes and classes. Second, school education sets a foundation for overall development and well being. Third, along with this, has come to an acceptance and agreement that special and extra efforts need to be made for children from vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. Fourth, we need to have a lot to do improve school education system to get it to an acceptable level. Matters related to equity and quality. And fifth, the curriculum in practice in our schools is very narrow. It is too focused on memorization and neither on building conceptual understanding or develop important human capabilities such as critical thinking. This must change. Corporal punishment is unlawful and must not be practiced. Sixth, the whole educational culture, not only in school but in homes and society overall, is obsessed with examination success. This includes board examinations and higher education entrance tests. This is bad. Seventh, our teacher education system, comprising what generally called B.Ed colleges, is a complete mess. This is one of the chief causes of poor quality of schooling system. Eighth, public education system, which we often call government school system, needs our attention and focus as it needs to be improved significantly. This consensus does not imply that there is agreement on all aspects equally, and even less that everyone agrees on way forward. If art and creativity takes a bow from Gen AI adoption, then the after effects could run deep wide. In the first week, as head of India's SEBI market regulator, Tuhin Kanta Pandey had sent the right signals and articulated that regulatory philosophy will inform the functioning of SEBI over the next few years. In his keynote, all reforms need not be a big bang. Many times, small reforms cumulatively may be more effective. The words going forwards are of significance, especially in the last few years, to do things that no regulator or jurisdiction has either attempted or considered worthwhile. The capital market is a dynamic space, so changes is imminent, but we will certainly not looking for maximum regulations for optimal regulation. If some states are redundant and outdated, some statutes are redundant or outdated over years, so not serving any purpose, we are heavy to review the same. Maintaining market integrity, SEBI roles and initiative. He spoke of several initiatives that SEBI has undertaken in the recent past. Social media ad targeting could face a mass rebellion. So that's all. See you in the next.